Hi everyone. I'm Gaurab. I'm a product manager here at MongoDB. Um, and Kevin.
So hi, it's Kevin. I'm a software engineer in MongoDB and leading the project.
And today we want to talk to you about building a MongoDB plugin in collaboration with the DataGrip team. So before we dive into the talk, I want to briefly cover what is MongoDB and what is Atlas. So, what we see from our perspective is in today's day and age, competitive advantage really comes down to how companies are building software using their most important asset, which is data. And especially in today's day and age where generative AI is becoming more and more popular, this becomes data becomes a lot more critical of an asset. Um, and working with data has kind of been like one of the hardest parts of building an application, if not the hardest. And especially as your application grows and scales, it can become a cumbersome thing for you to manage. And even more importantly, how we use this data to kind of build application has stayed stagnant, and the foundations have kind of stayed the same over the past 40 years, while our applications have evolved and the way that we build software, deploy software, and scale software has also evolved. And so in comes MongoDB, where Atlas is a developer data platform that has several different offerings to help you manage your data, all in one platform. So Atlas has things like vector search, stream processing, real-time analytics, full text search, time series processing, etc. And these are all built on top of the core MongoDB document model. And they're also built on top of the same query API that you'd use to query your OLTP database. Um, and on top of, and this is built on a platform where Atlas, there are four very critical kind of pillars that we look at when it comes to Atlas, which is performance, resilience, scalability, and security. And the great benefit of using Atlas is that it is global, it is multi-cloud, or if you'd like, you can also host on-premise or edge. So background and motivation for this specific plugin. Um, we wanted to, when we first set out, we wanted to meet kind of, we have this philosophy in developer tools that we want to meet our developers where they are. And what we noticed in one of the recent Stack Overflow surveys is IntelliJ IDEA was one of the top IDEs where generally professional developers kind of live on a day-to-day basis. But also more specifically, we saw this internally as well with our customers. Um, and yeah, as I mentioned, our philosophy in DevTools is kind of this idea of meeting developers where they are. And from IntelliJ and DataGrip perspective, we were already seeing a natural adoption with especially Java customers, where they preferred the IDE and wanted an experience that was very integrated with MongoDB. And most importantly, what we wanted to do in return is help the developers speed up their productivity as they're writing the application. And the best way to do this is meet them in the IDE where they're actively developing or testing. And here's where we wanted to enable MongoDB users even further and see how else we can innovatively help them write applications faster. So then that led us to reaching out to the DataGrip team. And when we spoke to the DataGrip team, one thing that was very clear is we had a very shared vision and goals, and our vision and goals are kind of very supplementary to each other. And that was really great to hear. On the MongoDB side, our primary goal was to increase the development productivity, especially for Java developers in IntelliJ. And more concretely, we wanted users to be able to connect and interact with their MongoDB clusters without having to context switch over to another tool. And the second goal was kind of being able to accurately write and test your Java queries. As a Java developer, you're writing a lot of MongoDB queries, and we wanted you to be able to efficiently test that out and make sure that the queries that you're writing are getting the results that you wanted. And then the final thing was uh, being able to surface up best practices where developers are actively writing code. So typically, when we think about best practices, we think about documentation or going onto some website or reading a long manual to understand how to efficiently use a piece of technology. But what we wanted to do was kind of meet developers where they're actively writing code and see if we can surface up these best practices in a way where they can proactively address and kind of adopt these best practices before they're deploying their applications in production, and then they have to retroactively go back and fix kind of the habits that they have. And one last thing is performance is kind of as we discussed earlier in one of the other slides, it's one of our four core pillars, and it is the one that we wanted to kind of focus on with this with the early version of this plugin. Is how can we make sure that whatever developers are doing in their IDE, they're doing it in the most performant way possible. And then when we spoke to the DataGrip team, what we discovered, and even before this, we had already discovered this, is DataGrip already had an integration with IntelliJ. And it was in the form of the Database Explorer extension, which you may be familiar with, that lives in IntelliJ. It is kind of, if you've never seen it before, it is kind of on your top right corner with that database icon. And what this integration from DataGrip allowed us to do is kind of skip the stage of uh, being able to let users connect and explore their data within MongoDB, because DataGrip already offered this experience in IntelliJ. So that allowed us to focus on goals 2 and 3, which, if you remember, that I just covered, were around query building and testing, and then also surfacing up these MongoDB best practices to make sure that our developers are writing the most performant code and queries, etc., when it comes to MongoDB. So a bit on the development process. I would like to hand this over to Kevin to talk about kind of our development process and iteration cycles that we're going through right now with the DataGrip team.
Yeah, thanks, Gaurab. So we actually started when we reached out the DataGrip team. We started discussing what are like the most important features that we want to have all together. What were the plans of each of the teams related to MongoDB? And then when we got to an agreement, we started like setting up touch points like Slack channels, email groups, and so on. So we had like as most accurate and real-time conversation as possible to get an alignment during the development process. Right now, we are just developing the plugin, and it's also in private preview for our internal teams that have been testing it for a few weeks, well, actually, a few weeks, a month already. And yeah, ideally, in not a really long term, we want to have a public preview where everyone can just test the plugin itself in their IntelliJ IDEA setups. So from the key challenges from a development perspective, IntelliJ as a platform is really versatile. I mean, you've been working with it. It supports C, C++, it supports Rust, PHP, Go, Java, Kotlin, Android, everything, right? So when you are working with a platform, you need to be aware of a lot of concepts. The main entry points to interact with the platform itself as a plugin developer are really convenient and are actually really easy to use. But it gets more complicated when you start working with more advanced topics like code parsing, ensuring the IDE works in a multi-threaded environment, and so on. Authenticating with the Database Explorer has been pretty complicated because it's essentially another plugin. It's not part of the integrated platform. It's another plugin that you need to integrate with yours, and you need to keep in sync both plugins around the connection, what you are doing, and so on. When the Database Explorer was implemented, it was designed with SQL in mind. And to integrate and adapt these concepts to MongoDB, there has been like a lot of work on different layers that adapt how we see a MongoDB cluster as a SQL database. And that complicated and made quite challenging querying MongoDB from within the plugin. Um, and to actually make it performant and efficient and to avoid interruptions during the development flow of the developer using the plugin. Testability was also another of the issues, not because the platform is bad at testing or not, it's because the actual logic is pretty complex. IntelliJ is a complex platform. We are doing complicated things like parsing code in real time, and that makes real complicated to have proper testing and a good coverage of what we are doing. And we've done a lot of investment on that part. UI testing with remote robot is something that we had to learn from scratch because it has a lot of tools around that and requires to learn like a JavaScript Reno to interact with the IDE and so on. And it makes it a little bit complicated to get started with. And we were having like issues with flaky tests. But right now it's working fine. We have invested a lot on it, and it's even in our open source repository, and you can even take a look if you want at how it works. We also have we built a release pipeline in an automatic manner with GitHub Actions, and we had several issues with code signing for deploying the plugin according to our security standards at MongoDB, and also for setting up the environment for UI testing because of IntelliJ not being capable of running headless for UI testing. We had to set up virtual desktops and so on. That is pretty well documented in the example repos, but we had to do some tweakings. And at the end, parsing code is really complicated. We are parsing whatever you are writing in real time thanks to the IntelliJ platform. It requires a lot of different patterns to ensure that everything is working. We don't break your code. We are also running queries with your code. We are analyzing the cluster, everything in real time in the background. It's a beautiful challenge, to be fair, and we hope it helps a lot. But it has been a challenge, after all. And it has been, we spent a lot of time making sure that it works fine and it doesn't affect negatively the user experience. I'm done with this part.
Yeah, definitely. I think that last part cannot be overstated, Kevin, where it is so amazing that we're able to kind of real time parse thousands of lines of code in the parse the code that you're writing with by processing thousands of lines of code in the backend on the extension side. And it's amazing that we're able to kind of do this so fast and surface up insights for users. So definitely excited to see how this will help our developers kind of move faster.
Totally. The IntelliJ platform does a lot of the heavy lifting by itself. In the sense, it's really good. And working with the platform and being able to parse different frameworks. We are parsing the Java driver. We are parsing a Spring criteria queries, a Spring add query in parallel at the same time. And it's actually part of the work of the IntelliJ platform. It allows us to do all of this. So it's great. It's great that we can do that.
Cool. Okay. Now for the next stage, we're just going to show you a quick demo of the plugin as it is today. And yeah, so let's dive into it.
I'm excited to show you how we have simplified Java application development with MongoDB using IntelliJ, which remains the most popular IDE among Java developers. When we were thinking about this problem, we discovered that IntelliJ already had a rich integration with MongoDB that allowed users to connect to their MongoDB cluster and browse their data and even prototype and test their MongoDB queries using Data Explorer features. Given the existing robust data browsing capabilities, we wanted to go a step further and partner with JetBrains to solve 3 primary pain points that we noticed in building Java applications with MongoDB. The first one is writing queries and autocompletion. When writing queries, we often have to refer to schema of our collection to ensure we are referencing valid field names and our values are typed appropriately. Here I have an example repository file for a ride-sharing app, and I want to write a query to find all pending disputes by fair type. Here I'm going to write a simple find query, and within this query I'm going to add 2 filters. Now at this point in time, when I'm about to reference a field for my documents, I typically need to switch context to find out the exact field name, or worse, I realize that there was a mistake when I'm compiling or testing my API. With the MongoDB plugin, I can simply pop open the autocomplete, and then I can pick from a list of field names that are already valid. So here I'm going to pick dispute status, and I'm going to look for pending disputes. And similarly, I'm going to go ahead and paste in the rest of the query. And that looks good to me. Now let's say I was unaware of a recent migration of dispute type from an integer type to a string. When I replace this value with an integer, I notice that I have a warning again. And when I hover over that warning, I can see that the plugin has told me the database is expecting a string, not an integer. So I'm going to go back to the string. To address the next pain point, we focused on testing and validating your queries as you are building your application. Generally, this requires you to first prototype and test your queries in another tool like Compass or Shell. And even worse, it requires Java developers to come up with Node shell syntax from scratch. To address this, we've placed a run button next to the query. And when I click on this button, it will take me to the Database Explorer playground with my Java query converted to shell syntax. Now I can easily run this query against my connected database and make sure that the query returns what I expected to return. And it looks like it's just about right. But there's something that I notice here. I notice that the query is running particularly slower than I expected to run. So let me go back to my application code. And here I see a warning. When I hover over this warning, I see that it says the query will not run without an index. And if I plan on running this query heavily, then I should consider creating an index. We totally understand that sometimes details can be lost while you're working on a mission-critical application. So the plugin's goal is to surface insights that will help you implement the best practices as you're writing your MongoDB application. So in order to create an index, if I so desire, I can go ahead and click on Implement an Index. That will take me back to a console that gives me valid fields where I can create an index for that specific query. And here it looks like it's dispute status and dispute type. It also gives me a template that I can easily index. Here I'm going to replace this one with dispute status. And then I'm going to go ahead and create another index for type. Once this is here, I can go ahead and run the creation of these two indices. And once that's run, I can go back and see that my warning has cleared. If I run the query again, I can see that my timing has now drastically reduced from 1 second, 1.6 seconds, all the way down to 192 milliseconds, which is quite a bit of an improvement.
Great. So that was a quick demo of our plugin in its current state. We're still adding more features to this, and some things you can expect are more support for Spring Framework in terms of autocomplete and type validation, and deeper support for being able to run queries in this translation fashion. So you're able to kind of write your queries in Java and then subsequently test them to make sure that your queries are outputting the right results that you desire. Okay, So now now we wanted to talk a little bit about lessons learned. Kevin?
Yep. So the first one and the most important one is keeping an open channel between us and the DataGrip team with JetBrains. That has been like really helpful, not only from the technical side. That now that I have time, I want to thank everyone in that channel because they are being really helpful. They have been like really quick answering our questions. So thank you. So having this communication from a technical perspective and also from a product perspective has been really helpful, because there are even some situations that we misunderstood how to do something from a product perspective, and they give us some clues on how to improve the user experience on our side. Also, learning about each other's roadmap has been helpful because we can implement features that they don't have the capacity or the time to do, and we have the experience to build them better, because at the end we are working with MongoDB, right? But we also can avoid re-implementing features that they can do better. So there's like a mixture of things that we can do together better. Also, because we are all developers at the end, and even if it can be dangerous, because as developers we have usually a strong bias over solutions, having different opinions of different people working on different problems has been like really helpful to get a more objective idea of the situation and how to make things better for everyone. Well, ensuring that there are no overlapping features, that's something that I already said, and experimenting with the platform. So IntelliJ, as I've said earlier, is huge. Is really big. It can do a lot of things, and you can solve a problem in different many ways. So experimenting with the platform to see which tools are best for solving your specific problem has been really fun, the first part, and it has been also like really fruitful, because now we have like our own patterns to solve issues. We are experimenting with the UI, and we believe we are doing something better thanks to like experimenting a lot with the platform and asking a lot of questions about the platform itself. Yeah, so all yours, Gaurab.
Awesome. Well, that concludes our talk. Thank you so much for listening into our talk on how we're going about building the MongoDB plugin in collaboration with the IntelliJ team and the DataGrip team. And just wanted to note that you can sign up for a private preview for the MongoDB extension. We'd love to have you get access to this early and kind of share your thoughts and help us realize, what we can do better for you. And ultimately, our focus is to make sure that we are able to make you as productive as possible, and more as we go forward in your IDEs. So we'd love to hear from you. So feel free to take a moment to scan this, and you can fill out a form to sign up for our private preview. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was quite a story. Thanks for sharing your experience and giving some insights of your actual plugin development process and the things that you encountered on this way. It's certainly a bit more of a complex plugin to build, and MongoDB itself and connecting it to the IDE is certainly quite a big task. So yeah. It seems we have only one question from the community, and that is, do you also support other languages, like PHP maybe?
I'll also let Kevin chime in on this. But no, currently we do not support PHP, and the reason it's so focused on IntelliJ today is because of all the stuff that you mentioned earlier, which is, we're doing like almost real time code parsing, and we have to kind of like dig into the syntax and understand the syntax and surface up recommendations that way. But rest assured, we're working. We have a roadmap where we eventually do hope to get to PHP and give this level of insight, which is great. Kevin?
I mean, there has been like a lot of interest, internal interest on different languages, not only PHP. So yeah, there's a roadmap, as Gaurab said. I remember when we started designing our documents around the plugin, we had like a lot of inputs from different product managers inside MongoDB, asking about Ruby, asking about PHP. I think there was also Go somewhere. So there's interest, and we have a roadmap. We don't know when, but we'll see. Yeah.
Okay. User report static QR code from your presentation doesn't work.
There it is.
I don't know. You can
Can
you
I
can
just
just
create a
share
link?
a link in the chat,
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah.
Okay, that would be
I don't know how to distribute it across all channels where we're live, but that is the link.
yeah. Okay, I'll just paste it. 1 second. So here's the link if you want to take a look at the MongoDB plugin from our two presenters from today. Well, we are running a bit short on time, and I see no further questions. So thank you guys a lot for joining and sharing your story with us. And have a great day. Take
Definitely.
care.
Thank you
Thanks
for
for
having
having
us.
us.